Okay, let's dive in. We have a huge development to unpack today in the medtech space. You're going deep on the new FDA approval for Edwards Lifesciences, that's ticker EW, for their SAPIEN M3 mitral valve system. And this is, well, it's way more than just another regulatory box tick. This feels like a real inflection point.
Oh, that's absolutely the right way to frame it. This is significant on a couple of levels. I mean, from a regulatory standpoint, sure, but it's also kind of historic. The SAPIEN M3 is the first ever transcatheter therapy that uses a fully percutaneous, a totally non-surgical transseptal approach for mitral regurgitation.
So no open heart surgery.
Not even a small incision in the chest. And when you think about the patients we're talking about, I mean, these are people who had zero options before. This is a whole new era. The market potential is just massive.
Right. So our mission here today is to really connect those clinical dots to what it means for the company and for investors. We're going to break down the clinical data that got this thing approved, the ENCircle trial, and figure out what the real technical advantage is here. And then, look at how the market is reacting and what analysts are expecting for Edwards Lifesciences now. So let's start with the event itself. Edwards Lifesciences got the green light from the FDA for the SAPIEN M3 system. It happened on December 23rd, 2025. Kind of a nice pre-holiday gift for shareholders.
A huge gift. And the indication who they can use this on, that's the critical piece. It's for patients with symptomatic, moderate to severe, or severe mitral regurgitation who are too sick for traditional surgery. Or, and this is key, who aren't good candidates for the existing repair technique, which is called TEER.
And there was another part of that indication that seems really important, something about MT.
Yes, mitral annular calcification. The approval also covers patients with MAC, and that is the market differentiator. These are the patients with really stiff calcified valves that are, notoriously difficult to treat. They're often just excluded from trials entirely.
So this unlocks a whole group of patients that were basically untreatable before.
Completely untreatable, and you can see that reflected in the market's reaction. The stock is trading right near its 52-week high. You look at the PE ratio, it's sitting around 38. That's a growth multiple. The market is absolutely betting on huge, sustained growth from this.
And that bet is being placed on the data from the ENCircle Jade trial. That was the pivotal study, right?
That's the one. A single-arm study, 299 high-risk patients. And they were looking at a primary endpoint of all-cause death or hospitalization for heart failure at 1 year.
And what was the number?
The result was 25.2%. But what's really fascinating and what got this approved is that the goal they had to beat, the performance goal, was 45%.
Whoa, wait a second. A 45% goal. That sounds incredibly high. I mean, these patients were sick, but was the baseline really that bad?
It was. It really was. You have to remember the context. These are patients who can't get surgery, and they also can't get the transcatheter repair.
Leftovers, basically.
Leftovers. Their 1-year outcomes on medical therapy alone were just terrible. So for this group, getting that composite endpoint down to 25%, you're basically cutting the expected event rate almost in half. It's a massive clinical win. And to really get how big of a deal that 25% is, you have to look at the history here. Mitral regurgitation is the most common valve disease in the world. And for years, if you were high risk, too frail, too much calcium, you were just sent home.
Medical management, which didn't do much.
Right. Now, before M3, there was another TMVR system, a replacement system from Abbott, the Tendyne system.
And that got approved earlier in 2025, but there was a catch with that one.
A big catch, the delivery. Tendyne uses what's called a trans-apical approach.
Which means?
It means they have to make a small incision in the chest, between the ribs, and literally puncture the bottom tip of the heart, the apex, to deliver the valve.
Oof. That sounds invasive. Especially for a frail patient.
It is. Clinicians like Dr. Gilbert Tang have been talking about this for years. The high morbidity, the high mortality, it's all tied to that trans-apical access. It was seen as a necessary evil, but everyone knew it was holding the field back.
So Edwards didn't just build a better valve, they built a better delivery system.
They solved the access problem. That's the innovation. M3 is fully percutaneous. They go in through the femoral vein in your leg.
The transfemoral approach.
Exactly. Transfemoral and then transseptal, they cross the wall between the atria. It completely avoids cutting into the chest or the heart muscle.
Okay, but this valve is a big piece of hardware. How do they get it to sit properly in an anatomy that's already calcified and complex?
That's the brilliant part. It's a two-step procedure. First, they deploy a self-expanding nitinol frame. They call it the dock.
The dock.
Right. It goes in, expands, and it actually encircles and grabs the native mitral leaflets. It basically creates a perfect standardized circular landing zone. Then they just advance the balloon-expandable SAPIEN M3 valve right into the middle of that dock and deploy it.
So the dock is more than just an anchor. I read it helps prevent a really bad complication, LVOT obstruction.
Exactly. The left ventricular outflow tract. Think of it as the main highway for blood leaving the heart. If you block it with your new valve, it's catastrophic. The dock is designed to gently push the native valve structures inward and out of the way, keeping that highway clear from the start. It's a huge safety feature.
Okay, so the clinical story is rock solid. How does Wall Street see this playing out? Let's go back to those ENCircle numbers.
Well, the efficacy data is just undeniable. They nearly eliminated significant mixed error. 95.7% of patients had little to no leakage at 30 days, and it held for a year.
And that actually made patients feel better.
Oh, absolutely. Quality of life scores, the KCCQ scores, improved by over 18 points on average, which is a huge deal. 88% of patients were back to being minimally symptomatic, and the killer stat really is the 30-day mortality. It was 0.7%. Remember, their predicted surgical risk was 6.6%.
That's incredible. That alone is going to drive referrals. But what about the risks? Nothing is perfect, especially in a patient population this sick.
Right, and we have to be realistic here. There were some significant safety signals. The stroke rate at 1 year was 9.3%, with about 4% being disabling. That's not trivial.
And what's driving that?
It's likely linked to the fact that 70% of these patients had atrial fibrillation, which makes anticoagulation blood thinners really tricky but essential. We also saw some valve thrombosis, blood clots on the valve, in about 6.7% of patients.
So there's a learning curve here for managing these patients after the procedure.
For sure. There was also a mechanical issue. Hemolysis, which is the breakdown of red blood cells, required a reintervention in about 7% of patients. And that was mostly caused by leaks around the valve, or PVO. So patient selection to avoid PVL is going to be critical.
Okay, so there are challenges. But, as you said, this is a group with no other options. From a competitive standpoint, this also makes Edwards' portfolio look incredibly strong.
It puts them in the driver's seat. They now have a mitral repair device, Pascal, and a mitral replacement device, SAPIEN M3. Plus, they have the EVOQ system for the tricuspid valve. They can basically treat almost any valve problem on either side of the heart. It's a huge advantage.
And the analysts are clearly seeing that. We saw a flurry of upgrades, JP Morgan to overweight with a $100 target, BTI reiterated a buy at $103. They're all modeling, what, 8 to 10% revenue growth for 2026?
And that's because this isn't just a new product. It's a new product that solves the single biggest problem of the first-generation devices. That risky trans-apical access, that technical moat is what they're betting on.
All right, now for our favorite segment. Time to put on our aggressive, outrageous, but plausible hats. This is where we pitch a trade idea based on all this.
Okay, so for this one, we're calling it the transcatheter access arbitrage trade.
I love it. Sounds complicated, but I think the thesis is pretty simple.
The thesis is very simple. We saw this play out in the aortic valve space, in TAVR. Once the less invasive transfemoral approach was proven to work well, the riskier trans-apical approach just faded away. It became a niche procedure.
Right.
We think the M3 approval does the exact same thing for the mitral space. It establishes transfemoral transseptal access as the gold standard. That makes the trans-apical approach used by Abbott's Tendyne basically obsolete for this new, bigger patient population.
So you're betting on a massive, rapid shift in how doctors choose to treat these patients. What's the trade?
The trade is a pair trade. You go long Edwards Lifesciences, betting on that accelerated option in market share dominance. And at the same time, you initiate a targeted short on the revenue segment tied to Tendyne. The thinking is that the higher morbidity of its access route is going to kill its growth prospects now that there's a better, safer option.
And the catalyst is that whole portfolio argument. Edwards has the complete toolkit now with M3 and the EVOQA. It's the total solution. That's what the market rewards.
Exactly. This is not financial advice, of course, but you can see the logic.
Okay, let's wrap this deep dive up. The key takeaway here is that the SAPIEN M3 approval is a pivotal moment. It's backed by very strong one-year data from the ENCircle trial. And most importantly, it marks a huge shift away from risky, more invasive procedures toward a fully percutaneous approach for a huge group of very sick patients who were previously left behind.
That shift in access from surgical to percutaneous, that's the whole story. But here's a final thought to leave you with, something to chew on. Given the complications we saw in the trial, the strokes, the hemolysis, even though the device was incredibly effective, the next big challenge for Edwards, and for this entire field, it's not going to be about efficacy anymore. They've kind of solved that.
So what is it?
It's going to be about two things. proving long-term valve durability over 5-10 years and getting much, much better at managing the post-procedural anticoagulation risks in this very complex, very sick patient population.
A great point. Every breakthrough creates the next set of challenges.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into a critical new market segment.